I don't think I know a single family that hasn't been touched by addiction. And for those of us who also have a story of recovery, it is a gift worth commemorating. The Pittsburgh Recovery Walk celebrates the many roads to recovery from addiction and all those who travel them. This year's walk is Saturday, September 7th. It kicks off right across from the Heinz History Center at 9 a.m. and heads downtown and back. It's free. They would love to know that you're coming, but registration is not required. There's going to be music, speakers, kids' activities, food trucks, a resource fair, dogs are welcome, plus the whole route is handicap accessible. Learn more at pghrecoverywalk.org because every recovery story matters. Liberty Magic is magic, up close and sometimes very personal. They have an intimate, speakeasy-style performance space, and they just announced their new lineup for this year's season. Miguel Munoz will be there starting in October. Miguel is a circus artist and world champion of magic, and Nick Defott will take the stage in November. Nick is known for an offbeat sense of humor and some jaw-dropping stunts. It's all at Liberty Magic in the Cultural District. Get your tickets at trustarts.org/magic before they disappear. Today on CityCast Pittsburgh, students are back in class, but teachers, well, that is another story. More than 8,300 Pennsylvania teachers have left the profession in the last year alone. And we think it's worth talking about why they're moving or retiring or just quitting and doing other kinds of work, and what the Commonwealth and our local school districts can do to try to make teaching here as attractive as it used to be. Today, we're revisiting a conversation with CityCast Philly host Trenae Nari to talk about this teacher shortage, its causes, the consequences, and a few potential solutions. It's Wednesday, August 28th. I'm Megan Harris, and here's what Pittsburgh's talking about.
Hey, Megan.
Hey, Trenae. Good morning.
So I'm getting ready to send the kids back to school. I got a pile of notebooks and crayons and pencils on the kitchen table. And so are so many other households across the Commonwealth. But, I want to talk about what our children and families will be walking into this school year.
Yeah, hopefully another good year for the kiddies. Mm-hmm. But all that learning is really coming at a cost to the educators right now. And we're going to kind of get into that.
Okay, so you're going to really be the bearer of bad news today, Megan.
Sorry, but we knew this one was going to be tough. And honestly, when you first brought up the idea of talking about all this, I knew I was going to go down a wormhole of research. Covering K-12 education was one of my first jobs here in Pennsylvania, fun fact. And it's something that I've stayed pretty passionate about, especially as a new mama now.
For sure, yeah. So I want to know, Megan, why can't the state and our respective cities keep enough good educators?
That is the big question, right? Like, why aren't there more teachers right now? And there are a bunch of reasons, but we're going to focus on 4 big ones. Are you ready for these?
Okay. Yeah, I'm ready.
Number one, this will not come as a shock to anyone. Teacher salaries have not kept up with inflation, especially for our early career teachers.
Right.
There's just not enough money. Number 2, loss of prestige, which I thought this one was interestingly phrased. So teachers are reporting that they don't feel respected. And some of that is about pay, but also about how our classrooms are being politically legislated right now, how folks have been coming for our library systems, changing what kinds of history or what version of history gets taught. And that's just some of the more recent stuff. Like if you go back to the second Bush era, teachers have been complaining, rightly, I think, about having less and less control of their classrooms and the outcomes of it because of so many standardized tests. And then, of course, the pandemic, right? Like teachers, some of them never came back. A lot of students have struggled to keep up in that kind of virtual environment. I don't know if your kids had any experiences with that.
Oh, yes.
But then, yeah. Then there's learning loss, right? And sometimes kids like act out. So there's mental and behavioral health stuff that just classrooms and districts have struggled to keep up with. And then one more big one kind of under this, number 2, a lot of teachers are afraid of being shot. Like school shootings are weighing on people a lot. All of that stuff is kind of combining to make the teaching profession look a lot less advantageous than it once did.
I completely can understand where they're coming from.
Yeah. So I think number 3 is actually weirdly a good thing, but it's not helping our schools. So we've got a really good economy right now, which means that teachers have options. Like a lot of them are college educated. They're excellent project managers. They can make complicated stuff seem simple. In most cases, they're pretty patient people. These are really attractive skills. Right. Higher paying professions are recruiting them like crazy, even among their own. Like some teachers, it just makes more financial sense to become an administrator, even if that means losing the stuff you love that got you into it, the classroom part. And then last, number 4, training. This is the piece that I think is so stark to me. When I moved to Pennsylvania a decade ago, our colleges and universities were still considered one of the best training programs nationwide for teaching. And at the time, it was not uncommon to see 3,000 or 4,000 applicants for a single job. Like imagine that 10 years ago. And that's just not the case anymore. In years prior to that, things were quietly changing. There had been 2,000 teaching jobs cut across the state. So that's why suddenly there were all these applicants everywhere. And the training just vastly outnumbered our available teaching jobs. So young people were looking around and being like, okay, maybe there's not going to be a position for me. Maybe I should study something else. And I don't know if you remember this, Trinae, but there was headlines constantly around that era, like 2012, 2013, 2014, about our teacher's pension.
Yeah, there were a lot of strikes happening across the state with different districts. Around teachers' salaries and pensions.
Yeah. So now you don't even have that baller retirement to sweeten the pot. So in that last decade, fewer and fewer people have been going to college to become a teacher. Universities responded by reducing their training and education programs, and some of them dropped them altogether. So now suddenly we have the reverse problem: a ton of jobs and not enough people interested or certified to fill them all.
Okay, so how is this all going to play out in our classrooms, right? What's going to happen in Pittsburgh and what's going to happen in Philly?
So that is the next big thing, right? Like the consequences. I think you've probably seen evidence of this, but Philly has been faring the worst of any county in the Commonwealth. According to a Penn State study about all of this, we will link it in the show notes, turnover in many cases is highest among men and teachers of color. You and I both know this, of course, but I think it bears saying city school districts like Pittsburgh and Philly serve much larger populations of kids of color than anywhere else in the state. But in Pennsylvania, Black, Hispanic, and multiracial teachers were around twice as likely to leave the teaching profession than their white counterparts. These are just really pressing issues in Pittsburgh and Philly. And Philly, of course, has one of the highest concentrations of Black residents in the entire U.S. So it's really, really important that we figure this out.
You know, it's something to have a teacher that understands you, not just academically, but the whole person of you as a student, understands your family, understands cultural celebrations that you have, you know, some of the fun stuff that is just kind of normal to the development of any child. You know, having that mentor, the coaches, and that teacher that, you know, I fell in love with music and history because of certain teachers. So it's just really important for, you know, the whole part, you know, of education.
Yeah. And it models the education system too. Like, you know, a really good teacher can make you maybe consider being one yourself in some capacity. But if you don't see yourself in the system, then why would you dream of becoming part of it? You know what I mean? So the why behind that, I think some of it is burnout, right?
For sure, yeah.
The RAND Corp recently published a study, I think it was in June, that found that Black teachers specifically report much higher rates of burnout all over the country, and that they just felt more likely to quit their jobs. Some of it, I think, is bad policy, like the racist, sexist, homophobic curricula we see being peddled, especially in Texas and Florida. And then some of it is also just bad planning. There's this this really cool organization in Philly called the Center for Black Educator Development. They do a lot of work around recruiting teachers of color. But its leader, Sharif Al-Mekki, he told NBC that a lot of the districts that come to him for help don't have any plans for retention. Like, they get the talent in the door, but then they don't provide any opportunities for advancement or professional development or mentorship. Like, they don't get to shape local policy or curricula. So they get hired and then they're out of there.
I feel like there's been a pullback recently of diversity and inclusion efforts at a lot of different companies. And a lot of workers and professionals of color have said similar things, that they're just not getting that type of support. Now, those are probably just regular teaching jobs. And I'm guessing it's worse for people who are taking on temporary positions, part-time work, substitute work even.
Yeah, 100%. Whether it's going to school, to the grocery store, or crossing a bridge to get to work, we all need an efficient way to get from A to B. The Airport Corridor Transportation Association, aka ACTA, wants to make that journey a little easier for us. The Ride ACTA shuttle connects riders from the IKEA Superstop over in Robinson to over 275 businesses, including Settlers Ridge, the mall at Robinson, and the Homewood Suites by the mall. Plus, they have an app, Ride ACTA. ACTA is committed to accessible, affordable, and sustainable travel solutions. The buses themselves are very cute, and their whole process is smooth, efficient, and it will keep you away from a steering wheel on Parkway West traffic. The whole idea is honestly genius, so it makes sense that they've offered nearly 850,000 rides in the last 15 years. Check it out for yourself at actapgh.org. That's actapgh.org.
So, Megan, with teachers leaving, how does this impact the classroom?
I mean, turnover hurts everyone, right? Like, Chalkbeat actually did a really nice 2-part breakdown that we'll link in the show notes, but I'll give you the Cliff Notes version. Students lose a trusted face, a person who recognizes you, your talents, your skills, and helps you through your challenges. Schools lose institutional knowledge. Like, you can't ask last year's teacher about a student's progress, so you have an idea of what you're walking into. That loss of teachers then leads to maybe lower student test scores, which, as we have established, can affect some of that state and federal funding and the support that makes you feel maybe less good about the job you're doing because of the way you feel like you're being judged on it. And schools can't find substitutes, so then the full-timers have trouble taking time off, or they have to cover extra classes. They get tired. There are just a lot of downstream effects to all this.
Yeah, for sure. I also want to add, for my family, my daughter is going into 4th grade, but her kindergarten teacher and I, we're actually still friends. We talk and share things about life on IG, and, she continues to encourage the children. Oftentimes, people don't think about that relationship building that happens between a teacher and a student, or a teacher and a family. That old saying that it takes a village to raise children. I really believe that. And I want to give my children's teachers, the past, present, and future ones, props for helping me as a parent raise and educate my kids. So, Megan, I know we've talked a lot about kind of the bleakness.
The bad.
Megan, I know we've talked about the bad, right? But, what do we have to look forward to? This is definitely a pressing issue in Pennsylvania. What are some possible potential solutions?
This is the fun part. 7 potential positives here.
Okay, thank God.
So, number 1, and I think this cannot be overstated, we could just pay people more, especially early and mid-career teachers, or for harder to cover subjects, or, for schools that are just particularly difficult to staff. The state could help pay more. That's number 1. Number 2, I thought this was a fun one. The Learning Policy Institute offered one of the most comprehensive looks in a while at something that I thought was sort of obvious, that the first year is often the hardest for somebody. They're new to the profession. They're new to being talked to and judged by little people all the time in their ear. So we could make that
teenagers,
first...
like don't forget the high school teachers.
Right. So we could make that first teaching year more like an apprenticeship. So you get a dedicated mentor or someone that works with you within the classroom and is a dedicated resource, and help with that retention thing. That first year is often the hardest and some folks just never return. Number 3, we could ask teachers how they're doing, like officially, formally, make it a thing to ask people like, hey, how you doing? A lot of states, not Pennsylvania, but some others, they actually survey teachers about like working conditions to try to proactively identify and solve problems. Number 4, give teachers more support, more autonomy on their curriculum, on student discipline. Take a little bit less from the state and give a little bit more to the local districts. Number 5, take intentional and intersectional efforts to recruit, hire, support, and promote teachers of color. And you need literally every one of those steps. You cannot let them slide. And those efforts should really start in college so that we're getting folks into the teacher training programs to feel supported throughout the whole process. Number 6, reduce certification and training barriers. There's a lot of red tape. I don't know how familiar you are with this, to like moving states, for example. Like if you and your family move from West Virginia to Pennsylvania, the teaching requirements could be totally different. So streamlining some of that could help. Some states are beginning to try that. I think there's 7 now that have made it possible to become a teacher through community college, for example, instead of the 4-year route, which is a lot more friendly to working people who need to count their pennies, or, their family requirements mean that they could only attend class at night. Like you get more mid-career people moving into education when they're already more patient. They maybe already have families of their own. They're better at dealing with children. And number 7, maybe my favorite, maybe a good old-fashioned PR campaign. There's actually a fair number of them happening across the country right now, organizations that are really actively looking for more support. They have commercials during major events. There's one called the 1 Million Teachers of Color campaign, another one called the Campaign for Our Shared Future. They actually launched their own educator defense fund earlier this year, so for like legal support for folks that are coming up against like far-right extremist groups like Moms for Liberty. It's really cool to see like kind of this groundswell of support where our teachers on their own are just being like, we need more help. We need more people that look like us. We need more people with our lived experience. Let's make it happen. If you won't help, we'll do it for ourselves.
For sure.
Or, maybe we could just all watch Abbott Elementary. I don't know. What do you think, Trinae? Does that make you want to be a teacher right now or not?
Oh, no, I can't be a teacher. I don't have the patience. Again, kudos to all of the educators from pre-K all the way to college levels. I think specifically about Abbott Elementary, though, I think they have done a phenomenal job of just putting this particular, so many of the issues that we talked about here today on the show, putting that in a comedic way, but it's serious. Mm-hmm. So shout out to Quinta Brunson, Lisa Ann Walter, and Cheryl Lee Ralph, along with others who not only play characters, but they have really been voices for education since the show. I see them in headlines speaking out about some of the issues that real districts are going through.
Yeah. If you're not familiar, Abbott, it supposedly takes place in Philadelphia. The first episode, some of the first few minutes, like it's talking about not being able to afford real basics in the classroom, and then it flashes to the Eagle Stadium. Like it is some real talk real fast, and it's also just really funny. Thank you so much, Trinae, for talking to us. I hope you and the kiddos have such a great first day.
Thank you.
That's all for today here on CityCast Pittsburgh. If you want to look into this data more yourself, there is a new study from Penn State looking at teacher attrition and turnover over the last 10 years. It's great. We will have it in the show notes. We'll be back tomorrow with more news from around the city. Talk to you soon.
Oh, you say yins, right? Is that what you're saying?
Mm-hmm.